I am 26 years old, a woman trying to build something of my own. My brother Leo is 28. For our entire lives, we have been in a quiet, unspoken race. A race I never seemed to be winning. The finish line was always my father's approval, a prize he dangled just out of my reach while handing it freely to Leo. But I never thought he would say it out loud. Not in front of everyone. The party was for his 60th birthday. The garden was full of people, friends, family, business partners. My mother, Eleanor, floated through the crowd, her smile as bright and fragile as a champagne flute. Leo was by my father's side, as always. He stood a little taller when my father was looking. I was standing near the back by a rose bush, holding my glass of champagne. I felt more comfortable with the thorns than with the small talk. My father, Richard, stepped onto the small, makeshift stage. He tapped the microphone. The chatter died down. He looked out at all of us, his eyes sweeping the crowd. He was a man who commanded attention. He always had. He started with the usual thanks. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the gifts. He thanked my mother for being his rock. He thanked his partners for their loyalty. It was all very normal. It was all very safe. Then his eyes found Leo. He smiled a real smile, the kind I rarely saw directed at me. And to my son, Leo, he said, his voice booming, my heir, the one who will carry on my legacy. I'm so proud of the man you've become. I felt a familiar pang. It was a dull ache I had lived with my whole life. I was used to it. I took a sip of my champagne and told myself it didn't matter. It was just Dad being Dad. He then looked over in my direction. His eyes met mine for a brief second. There was no warmth in them. It was like looking at a stranger. I have 2 children, he announced to the crowd, Leo and Clara, and I want to make something very clear to everyone here tonight. A knot formed in my stomach. This was new. He never brought our family dynamics into the public eye. He was a man who valued appearances above all else. I saw my mother's smile tighten at the edges. She knew where this was going. She always did. My father raised his glass high. People say a parent should support their children equally, he said, his voice laced with a strange kind of pride. I disagree. I believe in backing a winner. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. The silence was heavy. I could feel dozens of eyes turned towards me. I wanted to shrink. I wanted to disappear into the rosebush. I only support one of you, he declared, looking from me to Leo, then settling his gaze firmly on my brother. And Leo, that is you. To you, son, my full and total support. The words hit me like a physical blow. It was one thing to feel it. It was another thing to have it announced to the world as a point of pride. My hand trembled. The champagne flute felt slippery in my grasp. The world seemed to slow down. I saw the polite, pitying smiles on the faces of our guests. I saw my brother's smug grin. I saw my mother look away, unable to meet my eyes. I saw my father, his face set like stone, proud of the wound he had just inflicted. And then the glass slipped. It shattered on the stone patio. The sound was loud in the sudden, deep silence. It was like a gunshot. Everyone turned to look at me. The broken glass at my feet felt like a perfect mirror of how I felt inside. Shattered, exposed, humiliated. My father's face darkened with anger. He hated scenes. He hated anything that disrupted his perfect image. I had just created the biggest scene of all. I didn't apologize. I didn't cry. I just stood there, looking at the mess on the ground. Then I looked up, and for the first time in my life, I met my father's glare without flinching. A strange calm washed over me. The pain was still there, but something else was there too. A cold, hard resolve. He had drawn a line. He had made his choice in front of the whole world. And in that moment, as I stood over the wreckage of a champagne flute, I made a choice too. I would no longer be the quiet, overlooked daughter. I would no longer play the game I could never win. If he only supported one of us, then I would have to learn to support myself. And I would find out exactly what his full and total support for Leo really meant. The party continued, but the mood had shifted. People talked in hushed tones, occasionally glancing my way. I felt like an exhibit at a zoo. My mother finally came over to me, a frantic, false smile plastered on her face. "Clara, darling, are you all right?" she asked, her voice a nervous whisper. "I'm fine, Mom," I said, my voice flat. "Your father, he didn't mean it like that," she said, already trying to smooth things over. "You know how he is with words. He's just so proud of Leo's new venture." "He said he only supports one of us," I stated, not as a question, but as a fact. That seemed pretty clear to me. "Oh, you're being dramatic," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "He just meant he's putting his business focus on Leo's project right now. It's a bigger investment. You know that." I looked at her. My own mother, the great enabler, the one who had spent a lifetime teaching me to swallow my hurt and make myself smaller to keep the peace. "No, Mom," I said slowly. "I don't think I am being dramatic. I think I am finally seeing things as they are." She looked flustered. She wasn't used to me pushing back. "Well, you've embarrassed your father. You and that glass. You need to go apologize to him." "Apologize for what?" I asked. "For having a human reaction to being publicly disowned?" Her eyes widened. "Don't use that word, Clara. It's ugly. He didn't disown you." "Didn't he?" I asked. I bent down and carefully picked up the largest piece of the broken flute. I held it in my palm. It was sharp. It was dangerous. It felt like it. I didn't wait for her reply. I walked away, leaving her standing there with her worried expression and her weak excuses. I needed to get away. I went inside the house, into the quiet study. I could still hear the muffled sounds of the party outside. I sat in my father's large leather chair. It felt cold. I thought about the last few months. Leo had started a new tech company. He was always starting something new. His ideas were big and flashy, but they never seemed to go anywhere. My project was smaller, more practical. I wanted to open a small bookstore with a cafe. It was a dream I had been saving for, planning for years. I had a solid business plan. I had a location picked out. I had approached my father for a small loan, the same kind of startup money he had given Leo half a dozen times before. He had put me off. He said the market was bad. He said it was too risky. He said he needed to see more. Now I knew the real reason. He was backing the winner, and the winner was not me. It never had been. Leo came into the study a few minutes later. He didn't knock. He leaned against the doorframe, that smug look still on his face. "Quite a performance out there, little sister," he said. "I wasn't performing," I replied, not looking at him. "Could have fooled me," he said with a chuckle. "Dropping your glass. So dramatic. You really stole Dad's thunder." "Was that his thunder?" I asked. "Humiliating his daughter in front of 50 people?" Leo shrugged. He was just being honest. "It's a tough world, Clara. He's putting his money on a sure thing. My company is going to be huge. Your little bookshop was always just a hobby." A hot flare of anger went through me. "It's not a hobby. It's a viable business. I have the numbers to prove it." "Numbers don't matter as much as vision," he said, tapping his temple. "And Dad sees my vision. He always has." "What he sees," I said, finally looking at him, "is a son who tells him what he wants to hear. A son who looks good in a press photo. He doesn't see the truth." Leo's smile faded a little. "And what's the truth, Clara?" "The truth is that none of your ventures have ever made a profit." "Not a single one," I said. The words were out before I could stop them. It was a forbidden topic in our family. Leo's failures were to be ignored. His face hardened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" I stood up. "I know Dad bailed you out of that real estate disaster 2 years ago, and I know he paid off the investors from that failed app you launched last year. His full and total support isn't an investment, Leo. It's a safety net, a very, very expensive one. You're just jealous," he spat. "You're jealous that he believes in me and not in you." "I'm not jealous," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I'm curious. I'm curious what's so special about this new venture that he's willing to throw not just his money, but his own daughter under the bus for it." He had no answer for that. He just glared at me, his confidence shaken for the first time. "Stay out of my business, Clara," he warned. "It became my business when Dad announced it at his birthday party," I said. You and him, you made it my business." He turned and left, slamming the door behind him. I was alone again in the silent room. The adrenaline started to fade, replaced by a deep, chilling clarity. This wasn't just about favoritism anymore. It was about money. A lot of money. And my brother and my father were hiding something. I didn't know what it was yet, but I was going to find out. My quiet life was over. The race was on. And for the first time, I was going to run it on my own terms. The next morning, the house was thick with a tense silence. My mother was arranging flowers with a furious energy, snipping stems as if they were guilty of something. My father was hidden behind his newspaper, a wall of paper and ink. I sat at the breakfast table with a cup of coffee, the events of the previous night replaying in my mind. My father finally lowered his paper. He looked at me over the top of his reading glasses. "I expect an apology," he said, his voice cold. I took a slow sip of my coffee. "For what exactly?" "For the scene you caused," he replied. "For your blatant disrespect. You embarrassed this family." "I embarrassed the family," I repeated, my voice even. "I believe you were the one who gave a speech announcing to the world that you only love one of your children." My mother gasped. "Clara, he never said that." "He said he only supports one of us," I corrected. "In our family, that's the same thing as love. Money is the only language you and Dad speak fluently." My father's jaw tightened. "You are being hysterical." "I made a business decision. I am investing in Leo's company. It has a higher potential for return. Your quaint little bookshop is a sentimental dream with no real future. My sentimental dream has a projected profit margin of 15% in its first year, based on conservative estimates," I said calmly. "I included a full market analysis in the proposal I gave you, a proposal I'm not sure you even read." "I read enough of it," he snapped. "It's small time, Clara. I don't do small time." "You do with Leo," I pointed out. "His last 3 big-time ventures have cost you over $200,000 in losses. Is that what you call a good return on investment?" The color drained from his face. My mother shot me a panicked look, begging me with her eyes to stop, but I couldn't. The dam had broken. "That is a private family matter," my father said through gritted teeth. "You made it a public matter last night," I reminded him. "You stood on a stage, and you declared your financial allegiance. So let's talk about it. What is Leo's new company? What does it do? And why does it require so much of your support that there's none left for me?" "It's a tech startup. It's complex. You wouldn't understand," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "Try me," I said. "I have a degree in business administration. I think I can handle it." He stared at me, a flicker of something I couldn't identify in his eyes. Was it fear? "It's not your concern, Clara. My finances are my own. Who I choose to support is my decision. You will accept it with grace, and you will apologize for your behavior." "No," I said simply. "I don't think I will. I won't apologize for being hurt, and I won't apologize for asking questions that you clearly don't want to answer. I think from now on, I'll be looking into my own finances, and maybe the family's too." I stood up from the table, my coffee untouched. "I think I'd like to see the family trust documents, Dad. The one Grandpa set up for Leo and me. I think it's time I took a more active role in my own future." The threat hung in the air. We both knew the trust was supposed to be untouchable until we were 30. But we also both knew that my father was the trustee. He controlled it, and my words were a clear accusation. He didn't say anything. He just watched me walk out of the room, his face a mask of cold fury. My mother started to cry softly. I didn't look back. The investigation had begun. My first step was to try and get information from the one person who might give it to me, even accidentally. My mother. I found her in the sunroom, pretending to read a book, but I could see she hadn't turned a page. I sat down opposite her. "Mom, we need to talk," she sighed, placing the book in her lap. "Clara, please. Let's not have any more fighting. Your father is under a lot of stress." "What kind of stress?" I asked gently. "Is it about Leo's new company?" Her eyes shifted away from mine. "It's a big project. Big projects are always stressful." "What is the project, Mom? What does this company actually do?" Oh, it's something with computers, she said vaguely. Software, something about data security. Leo explained it to me, but it was all very technical. Data security, I repeated. That's a competitive field. Does he have a product? A prototype? I believe so, she said, though she sounded uncertain. He's been working very hard. He's so brilliant, your brother, just like your father. I decided to change tactics. Dad mentioned he's investing heavily in it. Where's the money coming from? Is it from his personal savings or from the family business? She stiffened. Clara, that is not your concern. You should not be asking these questions about your father's money. It becomes my concern when he uses that as a reason to deny me a small loan for my own business, I said. A business that, unlike Leo's, has a clear path to profitability. You have to understand, she said, her voice pleading. Leo needs this. It's his big chance. Your father is just trying to help his son succeed. He's been trying to help Leo succeed for 10 years, Mom. All it's done is drain family resources and teach Leo that he never has to face the consequences of his failures. That's a cruel thing to say, she whispered. It's the truth, I said. And I think there's more to it. I think Dad is hiding something about this investment, and I think you know what it is. She shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. You're imagining things. You're just hurt, and you're lashing out. Am I? I leaned forward. Then tell me I'm wrong. Look me in the eye and tell me that Leo's company is a legitimate, sound investment, and that Dad isn't doing something reckless to fund it. She couldn't do it. She looked down at her hands, her silence a confession. I had my first confirmation. Something was wrong. Very wrong. My mother knew it, and she was terrified. My next stop was the family lawyer, Mr. Thompson. He was an old friend of my father's, a man who had handled our family's affairs for decades. Getting anything out of him would be difficult, but I had to try. I made an appointment under the pretense of wanting to discuss my own will. He was a portly man with a kind face, but his eyes were sharp. He knew this was not a routine visit. After we dispensed with the pleasantries, I got straight to the point. Mr. Thompson, I'd like to see a copy of the trust my grandfather established for my brother and me. He cleared his throat. Of course, Clara, that's your right. However, the terms are quite clear. You cannot access the principal until your 30th birthday. Your father, as the trustee, manages the assets until then. I understand that, I said. I'm not looking to access the principal. I'm looking to review the trust's performance. I'd like to see the investment statements for the past 5 years. His friendly demeanor tightened. That's a bit unusual. Your father provides a summary report each year. Has he not given you yours? He has, I said. But I'd like to see the detailed statements from the brokerage firm. I'm taking a more active interest in my financial education. It was a plausible lie. He studied me for a long moment. Clara, is there a problem? Did you have a disagreement with your father? My father and I have a difference of opinion on investment strategy, I said carefully. I want to ensure my future is secure. Your father is an excellent businessman, he said, a little too quickly. He has managed the trust impeccably. Its value has grown considerably under his stewardship. I'm glad to hear it, I said. Then there should be no problem with me seeing the statements. He was cornered. Legally, I had the right to see them. He couldn't refuse without cause. Very well, he said with a sigh. I'll have my assistant gather the records. It may take a few days. Thank you, I said, standing up to leave. I appreciate your help. As I walked out of his office, I knew he would call my father the second the door closed. The battle lines were being drawn. My father would know I was serious. He would try to block me, to hide whatever he was doing. But I had taken the first step. I had rattled the cage, and now I just had to wait and see what came scurrying out. A few days later, a thick envelope arrived from Mr. Thompson's office. I took it to my room and locked the door. My hands were shaking slightly as I opened it. Inside were 5 years' worth of brokerage statements for the trust. I spread them out on my bed. At first, everything looked normal. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds. The portfolio was conservative, just as I would expect. The value had indeed grown, just as Mr. Thompson had said. I went through them, year by year, checking the summary reports my father had given me against the official documents. They matched. I started to feel a flicker of doubt. Was my mother right? Was I just being paranoid, lashing out because my feelings were hurt? Maybe my father really was just an old-fashioned man who believed in investing in his son over his daughter. It was infuriating, but it wasn't a crime. Then I got to the most recent statement, from the last quarter, and there it was. A single-line item that made my blood run cold. A withdrawal. A very large one. $250,000. It was dated just 2 months ago. The description was vague. Capital transfer to R&L Holdings. I had never heard of R&L Holdings. It wasn't one of the family's known businesses. I quickly searched the name online. The company was brand new, incorporated only 3 months ago. The registered agents were Richard Miller and Leo Miller, my father and my brother. My heart was pounding in my chest. He had taken $250,000 from the trust. Our trust. The money our grandfather had left for us, and he had funneled it into a shell corporation for Leo's new venture. This was more than just favoritism. This was illegal. As the trustee, he was legally obligated to manage the money for the benefit of both beneficiaries. He could not use it to solely fund one child's risky business, especially not without the other's consent. He had breached his fiduciary duty. I felt a wave of nausea. My own father, stealing from me. For Leo. The public humiliation at the party now made a sick kind of sense. It wasn't just a declaration of preference. It was a preemptive strike. He was building a narrative. The narrative was that Leo was the smart investment, and I was the sentimental dreamer. He was justifying his actions before I ever had a chance to discover them. I sat there for a long time. The statement clutched in my hand. The hurt was immense, a deep, cavernous wound. But underneath the hurt, the cold, hard resolve I had felt at the party began to solidify into something else. It was no longer just about finding out the truth. It was about justice. He had underestimated me his entire life. He had seen me as quiet, compliant, and weak. He was about to find out how wrong he was. I needed to know more about R&L Holdings. A simple corporate filing didn't tell me much. I needed to know where the money went. I needed proof that it was being used for Leo's company and not for some legitimate, shared investment. My mind raced. How could I find that out? I couldn't exactly ask my father for the company's bank records. I needed another way in. I thought about Leo. He was arrogant. He was careless. He probably thought he was untouchable, protected by our father. That was his weakness. I decided to pay him a visit at the small office space he had rented for his new company. He had been bragging about it for weeks. The nerve center of the next big thing, he called it. I had a feeling it was more for show than for actual work. When I arrived, the office was mostly empty. There were a few desks, a fancy coffee machine, and a lot of whiteboards covered in buzzwords like synergy and disruption. Leo was the only one there, leaning back in a large executive chair, his feet up on the desk, playing a game on his phone. He looked up, surprised to see me. Clara, to what do I owe the displeasure? I wanted to see it, I said, gesturing around the empty room. The empire you're building. He smirked, clearly pleased. Impressive, right? We're still in the early stages, of course, staffing up next month. Of course, I said, my voice neutral. So, what is it you actually do here? Dad said it was data security. It's more than that, he said, puffing out his chest. It's a revolutionary, new encryption protocol. It's going to change everything. We're talking military-grade security for the average consumer. It sounded impressive, but it also sounded completely generic. Wow, I said, injecting as much fake admiration as I could into my voice. That sounds incredibly complex. You must have a team of brilliant engineers working on it. The best, he said, though I knew he was the only team member so far. But I'm the visionary. I'm the one who directs the ship. I wandered over to his desk. It was cluttered with papers, coffee cups, and tech magazines. I was just thinking, I said casually. Dad is so proud of you. He's invested so much. He must have a lot of faith in this. He knows a winner when he sees one, Leo said, preening. He certainly does, I agreed. I was just curious from a business perspective. How do you handle all the startup costs? The rent here? Equipment? Salaries for those brilliant engineers? It must be a lot. He shrugged. You have to spend money to make money. Dad understands that. I was looking at some of the trust documents, I said, watching his face carefully. It's amazing how well it's been managed. Such a solid portfolio. He tensed slightly. Yeah, well, Dad's a smart guy. He is, I said. He's so smart. He even set up a special holding company for this venture. R&L Holdings, right? It's a clever way to structure the investment. Very professional. The blood drained from his face. I had him. He knew that I knew. His arrogance evaporated, replaced by panic. How do you know about that? He stammered. I'm a beneficiary of the trust, Leo. I'm allowed to see the statements, I said calmly. And I saw the $250,000 transfer. He jumped to his feet. That's none of your business. That was an investment Dad made. It was our money, Leo, I said, my voice hardening. Half of it was my money, and he gave it to you without my knowledge or consent. That's illegal. It's not illegal, he blustered. It's a loan. We're going to pay it back with interest as soon as we get our first round of funding. A loan? I raised an eyebrow. Is there a loan agreement? A repayment schedule? Or did Dad just write you a check from our inheritance? He started to pace around the small office, running his hands through his hair. You don't understand. This is a sure thing, Clara. This company is going to be worth millions. We'll put the money back, and it will be like it never happened. You'll get your share, plus a huge profit. And what if it's not a sure thing, Leo? I pressed. What if it's just another one of your failed projects? What happens then? The money is just gone. My money is gone. It won't fail, he shouted. Dad wouldn't let it fail. Dad can't stop a bad idea from being a bad idea, I said. What is the product, Leo? Show it to me. Show me this revolutionary encryption protocol. He stopped pacing. He looked cornered. It's still in development. It's proprietary. I can't just show it to you. There is no product, is there? I said, the realization dawning on me. This whole thing is a sham. There are no engineers. There is no protocol. There's just this empty office and $250,000 of our grandfather's money that you and Dad have stolen. He stared at me, his eyes wide with fear. He opened his mouth to deny it, but no words came out. He was a terrible liar when he was scared. Where is the money, Leo? I asked, my voice deadly soft. He shook his head, backing away from me. I can't tell you. You will, I said, or I will go to Mr. Thompson, and I will go to the authorities, and I will tell them that my father, the trustee, has embezzled funds from a trust. He'll be disbarred. He could go to jail. Is that what you want? Tears started to well up in his eyes. The smug, confident man was gone. In his place was a terrified little boy. You wouldn't do that, he whispered. He's our father. He stopped being my father in any meaningful way when he stood on that stage and disowned me, I said coldly. And he certainly stopped when he stole from me. So I'll ask you one more time, where is the money? He finally broke. He sank into his chair and buried his face in his hands. It's gone, he mumbled. What do you mean, it's gone? Most of it, he sobbed. I had some debts. Some old investors from the last project were threatening to sue. I had to pay them off, and I made a bad investment. I thought I could double the money quickly and put it back before anyone noticed. I felt sick. It was worse than I'd imagined. It wasn't just a misguided investment in a new company. It was a cover-up, a desperate attempt to hide his past failures, and my father had enabled it. He had sacrificed my inheritance to protect Leo's reputation and his own pride. How much is left? I asked, my voice devoid of any emotion. He looked up, his face streaked with tears. Maybe 50,000. $200,000. Gone. Wasted on paying off Leo's mistakes and a foolish gamble. I looked around the empty office, at the stupid whiteboards, and the expensive coffee machine. It was all a facade, a stage set for a play that would never be performed. You have 24 hours, Leo, I said, my voice like ice. You are going to go to the bank, and you are going to get a cashier's check for every last cent that is left in the R&L Holdings account. You will give it to me, and then you and I are going to have a long talk with Dad. He looked up at me, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. And you won't go to the police? That depends entirely on what happens in the next 24 hours, I said. It depends on how willing you and Dad are to make this right. I turned and walked out of the office, leaving him crying at his desk. I didn't feel any pity for him. I didn't feel any satisfaction. I just felt a profound, chilling emptiness. My family wasn't just broken. It was rotten to the core. And I was the only one who could cut out the decay before it consumed everything. The next day was the longest of my life. I waited. I didn't call Leo. I didn't speak to my parents. I stayed in my room, planning my next move. The $50,000, if he even managed to get it, was not enough. It was a fraction of what was taken. What I wanted was not just the money. I wanted accountability. I wanted the truth to come out. Late in the afternoon, Leo called me. His voice was shaky. I have it, he said. The check. Good, I replied. Now tell Dad to be in his study at 7 p.m. tonight. You will be there too. We are having a family meeting. Clara, can't we just handle this between us? He pleaded. He's not going to take this well. He should have thought of that before he stole from me, I said, and hung up. At precisely 7 o'clock, I walked into my father's study. He was sitting behind his large mahogany desk. Leo was standing in the corner, looking pale and sick. The air was thick with tension. My father looked at me, his eyes burning with a cold rage. Leo tells me you have been making some wild, slanderous accusations. Have I asked calmly. I walked over to the desk and placed the brokerage statement in front of him, the one showing the $250,000 withdrawal. Is this a wild accusation? He glanced at it, his expression not changing. That was a trust investment, a strategic allocation of capital into a high-growth private enterprise. You mean R&L Holdings? I said. The company you and Leo set up 3 months ago? The one you funded by taking money that belongs to both of your children? It was for the benefit of the trust, he insisted, his voice rising. The returns would have been astronomical. It would have benefited you as well. There are no returns, are there, Dad? I said, turning to my brother. Leo, why don't you tell him what you told me? Tell him about your high-growth private enterprise. Leo flinched, refusing to meet my father's gaze. He won't tell you, I said. Then I will. There is no company. There is no revolutionary product. There are just debts. Old debts from Leo's last failure. And a gambling problem. That's where the money went, isn't it, Leo? You paid off your bookies, and you lost the rest on a stupid stock tip. Leo started to sob quietly in the corner. My father stared at me, his mask of control finally cracking. For the first time, I saw genuine shock on his face. He looked at Leo, then back at me. Is this true? He asked, his voice a hoarse whisper. It's not what you think, Leo mumbled. I was going to fix it. Fix it! My father roared, slamming his fist on the desk. You told me you had a prototype. You told me you had investors lined up. You lied to me. I had to, Leo cried. You were going to cut me off. I was desperate. It was pathetic. The two of them, finally facing the consequences of their lies and delusions, but I felt no sympathy. You both lied, I said, my voice cutting through their argument. Leo lied about the company. And you, Dad, you lied about everything else. You lied to me. You lied to Mr. Thompson. And you broke the law. My father turned his fury on me. This is your fault. If you hadn't gone snooping, this could have been handled quietly. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Handled? You mean you would have covered it up, just like you always do. You would have drained the rest of the trust to pay for his mistakes, and you would have told me it was a market downturn. You were never going to tell me the truth. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, he yelled, to maintain this family's reputation, to make sure my son is a success. What about your daughter? I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper. What about my future? Did that ever matter to you? Or was I always just the backup plan? The one you could afford to sacrifice? He had no answer. He just stared at me, his face a mixture of anger and, for the first time, shame. I walked over to Leo. Where is the check? He shakily handed me the cashier's check for $50,000. I looked at it, then put it in my pocket. This is a start, I said, but it's not enough. You two owe me $200,000 and I am going to get it. I turned back to my father. You have two options. Option one, you go to the bank tomorrow, you liquidate your personal assets, you sell your stocks, you do whatever it takes, and you put $200,000 into a new, separate trust account for me with an independent trustee. You will also sign over full control of my half of the original trust to that same independent trustee. We will sign a legal document, drafted by my lawyer, not yours, stating that this resolves the matter and I will not press charges for embezzlement. He stared at me, aghast. You would blackmail your own father? You stole from your own daughter, I countered. I'm not blackmailing you. I'm offering you a way to avoid prison, which brings me to option two. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. Option two is that I walk out of this room, I call Mr. Thompson, and then I call the district attorney. I will show them the statements. I will have Leo testify about where the money went, and I will let the justice system sort it out. You will be disbarred, the family name will be dragged through the mud, and you will likely spend your 60th year in a jail cell. The choice is yours. My mother had appeared in the doorway at some point during the shouting. She was pale, her hand over her mouth. Clara, you can't, she pleaded. This will destroy us. He did this, Mom, I said, my voice hard. He and Leo, they built this house of cards. I'm just the one who finally pulled one out from the bottom. I looked back at my father. He looked old. He looked defeated. The powerful, commanding man from the party was gone. In his place was a scared old man who had been caught. You have until 9 a.m. tomorrow to call me and tell me your decision, I said. If I don't hear from you, I'll assume you've chosen option two. I walked out of the study, past my weeping mother, and out of the house. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there another night. As I drove away, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow. I had won. I had gotten the truth, but I had lost my family. Or maybe I had just lost the illusion of a family I never really had in the first place. I spent the night at a hotel. It was a strange, anonymous room, but it felt safer and more peaceful than my own bedroom had in years. I didn't sleep much. I kept replaying the scene in the study over and over in my head. My father's rage, Leo's tears, my mother's terrified face. A part of me felt a pang of guilt. Had I been too harsh? Too cold? Then I would remember the birthday party, my father's voice booming over the microphone. I only support one of you. The sea of pitying faces, the shame, the humiliation. And I knew I had done the right thing. They had given me no other choice. This wasn't just about money. It was about respect. It was about my entire life of being made to feel second best, of being told my dreams were smaller, less important. This was the moment I finally stood up and said, no more. My phone rang at 8:45 the next morning. It was my father. His voice was tired, stripped of all its usual authority. I accept your terms, he said without any preamble. All of them? I asked, needing to hear it. Yes, he sighed. All of them. I will contact my broker this morning to begin liquidating the assets. You will have your money. Send me the contact information for your lawyer. We will get this done. Good, I said. That's a wise decision. There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. I thought he might say something else. An apology, perhaps. An explanation. But he didn't. Is that all? He finally asked. For now, I said. Yes. I hung up the phone. I felt a sense of relief, but it was a heavy, joyless kind. I had won the war, but the battlefield was my own family, and the casualties were the relationships I had once, foolishly, thought were real. I hired a lawyer, a sharp woman named Ms. Davis who specialized in trust and estate litigation. I explained the situation to her in cold, hard facts. I left out the emotional turmoil, the years of favoritism, the birthday party. I just gave her the documents, the trust agreement, the brokerage statements, the proof of R&L holdings. She listened patiently, her expression unreadable. When I was finished, she nodded slowly. "This is textbook breach of fiduciary duty," she said, "and embezzlement. You could have him prosecuted. He would lose everything." "I know," I said, "but I'm giving him a chance to make it right. I want what's mine, and I want to be free of him. That's all." "And the brother?" she asked. "He's a fool," I said. "But my father is the one who held the power. He's the trustee. He's the one who is legally responsible." Ms. Davis drafted the settlement agreement. It was ironclad. It stipulated the transfer of the $200,000 into a new trust account for me, managed by a corporate trustee of my choosing. It also legally severed my father's control over my half of the original trust. My inheritance would be protected from him and from Leo forever. The signing took place a week later in Ms. Davis's office. It was the first time I had seen my father since the confrontation in the study. He looked smaller, diminished. He didn't look at me. He just sat at the long conference table and signed the documents where he was told. Leo was not there. My mother was not there. It was just me, my father, and our lawyers. When it was over, he stood up to leave. He paused at the door. "Are you happy now, Clara?" he asked, his voice full of bitterness. "You've torn this family apart." I looked at him, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of pity. He truly didn't get it. He truly believed he was the victim. "The family was already torn apart, Dad," I said quietly. "You just refused to see it. You were so focused on propping up your perfect son that you didn't notice your daughter was drowning. I didn't tear the family apart. I just learned how to swim." He had no reply to that. He just turned and walked out the door. I never saw him again in person. The money was transferred the next day. Seeing it in my own, protected account was a strange feeling. It wasn't a victory prize. It was a restitution. It was the start of my new life. A few weeks later, I got a call from my Aunt Carol, my father's sister. She had always been kind to me, a quiet ally in a family that often felt hostile. "I heard there was some trouble," she said gently. "You could say that," I replied. "Your mother called me crying," she said. "She told me some story about you blackmailing your father. I had a feeling there was more to it than that. Richard was always a fool when it came to that boy." It was a relief to hear someone else say it, to have my reality validated. "He took money from the trust, Aunt Carol. Money Grandpa left for me. He gave it to Leo to cover his debts." She sighed deeply. "I'm not surprised. I am so sorry, Clara. No child should have to go through that." "I'm okay," I said, and I was surprised to find that it was true. "I'm free of them now. I have my own money, and I'm going to start my own life." "Good for you," she said, her voice warm. "You were always the strong one." "Your father was too blind to see it. What will you do now?" "I'm going to open my bookshop," I said, a real smile spreading across my face for the first time in a long time. And that's what I did. I found the perfect little spot in a quiet neighborhood. I used the money from the settlement to buy the property outright. I spent months renovating it, picking out shelves, ordering books, designing the little cafe in the corner. It was hard work, but it was my work. Every decision was mine. Every success was mine. The shop, which I named The Next Chapter, opened 6 months later. It was a modest success at first. Then it grew. People loved the cozy atmosphere, the carefully selected books, the good coffee. It became a community hub. I was happy. Truly, deeply happy in a way I had never been before. I had occasional updates on my family from Aunt Carol. My father had been forced into early retirement. The story he told his friends was that he wanted to spend more time traveling, but Carol said the truth was that the loss of $200,000 from his personal accounts, combined with the stress of the situation, had broken him. He and my mother lived a quiet, isolated life. Their social circle had shrunk. The perfect image had been shattered, and they didn't know how to live without it. Leo had to declare bankruptcy. Without my father's endless supply of cash to bail him out, his house of cards had finally collapsed. He had to sell his fancy car and move into a small apartment. He was working a low-level sales job, the kind he had always looked down on. He had called me once, late at night. A few months after everything happened, he was drunk. He slurred his way through a rambling, self-pitying apology that was more of an accusation than anything else. He blamed me for his downfall. I listened for a minute. Then I said, "You did this to yourself, Leo," and I hung up. I changed my number the next day. One afternoon, about a year after the bookstore opened, my mother showed up. I hadn't seen her since the day of the confrontation. She looked older, her face etched with worry lines. She stood uncertainly at the entrance, looking around at my beautiful shop. "It's lovely, Clara," she said softly. "Thank you, Mom," I said, my voice polite but distant. "Your father, he misses you," she said. I didn't say anything. I just continued wiping down the counter. "We were wondering," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "if you might consider a small loan, just to help us get back on our feet. Your father's pension isn't what he expected." I stopped what I was doing, and I looked at her. I looked at this woman who had stood by and watched me be emotionally abused my entire life. The woman who had told me to apologize after being publicly humiliated. The woman who was now asking me for money, the very thing her husband and son had stolen from me. The request was so audacious, so completely tone-deaf, that I couldn't even be angry. I just felt a profound sense of pity for her. She was trapped in their world, a world of denial and entitlement. "No, Mom," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I'm sorry, but no." Tears filled her eyes. "But we're your family." "You are," I agreed. "But this bookstore, this life I've built, this is my family now. This is what I support. And unlike Dad, I support it with my whole heart, not just my wallet." She stood there for a moment, her face crumbling. Then, without another word, she turned and left. I watched her go, a small, sad figure walking away from the bright, warm light of my shop. I never heard from them again. My life continued. My business thrived. I found love. I made friends. I built a life that was entirely my own on my own terms. Sometimes I would think about them. I would think about the shattered glass on the patio, the cold fury in my father's eyes, the pathetic tears of my brother. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel hurt. I just felt a quiet sense of gratitude. My father's cruel words at that party, the words that were meant to break me, had instead set me free. He had said he only supported one of us, and in the end, he was right. He had supported Leo's downfall, and in his own twisted way, by pushing me out, he had forced me to find the strength to support myself, and for that, I suppose I could almost thank him. But I never would. Some chapters are best left closed.